And
There were.
just briefly here, you mentioned 2 times so far that you went to Mars. Did you go more times, or was this it?
Well, I have a fragmented memory of being in a long linear base on Mars and looking out this long horizontal window at this debris field of big rock and turning and having somebody that I know say something to me. But I don't know if that was a dream or whether that was a trip up there. I think that may have been a dream that was inspired by my earlier trips. But I know that the trips up there to hunt occurred because, like I say, they were as stressful or as challenging as agreeing to being an astronaut and going up in the space shuttle. I mean, I had specialized training. It was of a minimal nature, but it was still a gross digression for my life at that point. At that point, I was an undergraduate at UCLA. I was a staff writer for the UCLA Daily Bruin, a young journalist. And it was in that context that I actually encountered Barack Obama as a young college student of my generation. And I wasn't immersed in Defense Department activities. Those were 10 years behind me. I was sometimes going to the beach. I was doing a lot of reading outside of class, reading a lot of writers who I admired and, studying their style. I was really planning for a career in journalism around that time, and it was really a wide deviation from what I was then immersed in. And so, but I don't think he meant that I was performing a specific function up there, like I had to get on the surface of Mars for some reason to achieve sustainability. I think he just meant, look, if you and others don't want to go up there, we're in trouble because we need to place personnel up there because we need to extend the ambit of our civilization beyond Earth.
Mm.
That's what I think he meant.
Okay.
And I think that did tie into my destiny of being a researcher and a writer who will obviously probably works for the rest of my life about Mars because there's a lot up there to analyze.
Uh, in terms of, you mentioned before, Andrew, that the Martians were interested to come to Earth. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Do they want to come here permanently? Do they have to leave their planet? Is it deteriorating so quickly that it will be unlivable soon, or what was the reason for this?
Citing the findings of Dr. Courtney Brown's team of remote viewers at Emory University in Atlanta, they found that not only have the advanced Martian humanoids like us, the ones that are very similar to us, been here in this era with their ships, but they have colonies in the mountains outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, and in South America. And their ultimate goal is to move their entire population of about 1 million humanoids to Earth. Now, 4 days after I published my paper, The Discovery of Life on Mars, originally in December 12th of 2008, and then we did the press release several weeks later. I think the press release went out on December 28th of 2008. In early January of 2009, even though my cell phone number had been changed and it was not in wide circulation at that point, I received a call from a woman who had been attached to Project Pegasus, who was then a DARPA psychologist, but she had entered my life in July of 2005. And she revealed to me her identity with the CIA and had stated about how the CIA was going to let me go forward and talk about my experiences in Project Pegasus, which I was then beginning to lecture about publicly in 2004 and 5. So she showed up in my life again, even though I hadn't seen her for 35 years. And she said, Andy, I'm proud of you, and you're getting the facts right, and we're going to let you go forward. And by that, she meant the U.S. intelligence community. She was essentially infiltrating my social life to basically give me information from the government that they were not going to try to shut me down. Because you may recall that in June of 2003, I had that discussion in southwest Colorado at the Wolf Creek Pass Ski Lodge. Excuse me, with a representative of the executive office of the Bush White House, where they told me that if I didn't stop researching, writing, or talking about experiences in Project Pegasus, they couldn't, unquote, guarantee my survival.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So 2 years later, this woman had entered my life, and she was basically telling me, we're going to green light you, and you can go forward and continue. Because by then, I started to lecture, actually, and my first public lecture was in October of 2004. So she entered my life the next summer, and I recognized who she was. In fact, I said, you were on the project, weren't you? And she said, Andy, at one point I was your coach. And what she meant by that was she was working with me to become comfortable traveling to the future. For example, via the Stargate at Cerritos when we were recovering the information from from the project people in the year 2045 and bringing it back.
Mm.
Those long jumps were really starting to bother me as a kid in the project. I was concerned that I wasn't going to get home. So she enters my life in June of 2005. Haven't seen her in 35 years. And then when I published my Mars paper in 2008, 4 days later she calls me. And what she confirmed during that discussion is that the CIA's position is that there are about 1 million humanoids in that underground civilization on Mars, and they're of several types. Well, my data has already proved that. I haven't found 1 million humanoids up there, but I have established that the two dominant humanoids who sometimes come up to the surface of Mars and have been photographed already by us on the surface are the ones that look essentially like us, that are usually bald, at least the males are bald, and then another group that looks more like the grays of the extraterrestrial contact literature.
Hmm.
And those, I think, were the several types she was talking about. And they seem to be in a cooperative social order. I don't believe they're adversaries of any kind. So there was some speciation within humanoids on the surface there. Maybe it was a situation where we have the descendants of our relatives from that pre-solar system catastrophe interplanetary confederation that existed, and maybe another group that is located on Mars after having traveled there from another star system. That would be my guess.
And in regards to the civilization, how's the relationship now then between humans coming from Earth going up there? Are they let into the underground civilization of Mars and so forth? Is there a good relationship there? And to further, maybe you can explain, if you've been there, how does it look like? Is it cities or small towns or just tunnels? How is it up there?
Well, I only have several data points to address your question. Obviously, in 1970, there was liaison going on in the aerospace community between our Martian relatives and our own engineers. So that's a positive fact. We also have the fact that in the photographs, you don't see any adversarial behavior between the humanoids like us and the more extraterrestrial-like humanoids that are up there. We also have the fact that when I teleported there in 1981, and this has been verified not only in Courtney Brown's remote viewing data, but also in statements made by my honorable colleague David Wilcock, that we have underground bases there that are essentially in sort of liaison with the Martians. So, assuming arguendo that the data provided by David is as valid as my own. I mean, I haven't even spoken with him yet. We haven't compared notes yet. But to the extent that that he's articulated an underground presence of humans from Earth, not indigenous Martians, that number 600,000. What the base that I was teleported to in 1981, which was an underground base that one really couldn't tell whether it was a human Earth base or a Martian base that had been lent to us, indicates that, I mean, my point here is there is no evidence of any adversarial relationship between the indigenous Martians and the colonists from Earth that are becoming Martians, basically human beings from the U.S. government that are up there.
Except
there was
the occasional man-eating animals up there, then, I guess.
Well, yeah. There's obviously the threat to different, humanoid species, including ourselves, from some of the predator animal species that are on the surface. But everything implies harmonious relations between our explorers or chrononauts that are up there, astronauts, whatever you want to call them, our Mars explorers from our civilization on Earth, and the indigenous civilization there on Mars. I mean, I don't know whether the particular underground location I was teleported to was a Martian base that was lent to us, or a Martian base that we had established as a kind of a stronghold, a kind of a breach of their civilization, that we had established a beachhead in their violating their territorial sovereignty, their territorial integrity. I don't think we have, but I am concerned that we haven't had a discussion among our civilization here on Earth about the impacts of visitation and habitation and exploration of Mars, and even perhaps efforts to colonize Mars by our civilization from Earth. We clearly have a presence there, and it hasn't been discussed, and that's an evasion of our political responsibility